Mm-hmm.
well, other exceptions to it,
Sure.
is essentially as rare as the dodo.
Yes.
Now the question is that beast as rare in the United States?
No.
Is that because of the population base and the size of the economy, would you say, or is it because there is just generally more of an appetite for a certain type and level of risk
Both.
than we have here?
Yeah. So first of all, we're 300 million people, so it's a lot of people. Second is I think there's a higher risk profile, just more entrepreneurial country in general, just because, like I said, we don't have the same systems in place of any kind, of any type of soft money in any of our industries. I mean, we have to be more entrepreneurial. So I think that's part of it is just cultural, and then the third part. Which seems funny, but it's true, is just kind of the Hollywood thing. So, so many investors will say, and I've talked to some personally, who will just say, well, yeah, it'd be nice to come to set, have a chair with my name on it, come to the premiere, and then, they tell their buddies, and oh, I want that too. And so it's actually really a thing. I mean, yeah. But then again, the other side to that is in the US, there's just a lot more, the competition is so much, there's so many films. So, there's a lot of films that make $2.50 on VOD platforms. There's just too many. So it's, I hear what you're saying, but, the problem in the US is the market is so big. It's the benefit and the, and the curse also. Yes?
What level of pre-sales are the smaller budget?
None, really. The films that are getting pre-sales right now are typically, well, for the most part, it's theatrical level films, so the bigger, budgets, 10 million and higher. At the $2 million level, sometimes you can get maybe 30-ish% of your budget in pre-sales, but the cast, it's all pretty much cast-driven. There are outliers to all of this, of course. I have a member on my website who makes films in the $100,000 range and gets 50,000 of that in pre-sales every time. He makes family films with dogs and horses and kids, and it's an evergreen genre that he has the buyers that want it, and he pre-sells every time. So there are exceptions to that, but in general, usually you should count, if you have the type of film that is pre-sellable, so director, talent, in some cases genre, about 30% of your finance plan could be pre-sales. But look, it's a tough pre-sales market right now. It's very much cast dependent, which is usually director dependent. And those are some of the hardest pieces as a new producer. It's really hard to get your script to a big name director who's going to attract the big name talent, because chances are they have their own projects they're trying to push through the system.
And are you saying that some films are making $2 million without theatrical release?
So the movies that I gave that example, those are the films that are getting acquired at Sundance for $2 million and $3 million, and those are typically getting acquired by the theatrical companies. So those.
You're talking about a film that's not in the dead zone.
Yeah.
2 million or under.
Yeah.
And you're saying classifying those as non-theatrical.
Right. Well, it could be.
I mean, the number of movies that are making, $1 million or $2 million on VOD without theatrical release, I mean, that list must be.
Oh, yeah. So there are $1 and $2 million films that are going into the festivals and getting picked up, right? Maybe they're only getting picked up for some, like I said, the ones that don't get picked up at Sundance, it's usually under $1 million. Some of these, personally, if you're going to make a movie in the 2 million range, usually what I do for that, let's take the $2 million film. Only 30% of that should be, 30 to 50 should be private equity. Like if you're going to make a movie for that much, it should have some type of tax credits, plus it should have some elements that you can get 1 or 2 pre-sales, and then mitigate your private equity piece to no more than 30, 40% if possible. And if not, that's when you start kind of scaling back to, okay, well, we're going to make it for $1 million. You know, it's still hard to justify $1 million to $2 million film. But beyond that, the dead zone means that people are really, as a general rule, people are kind of paying the same prices within that they are for $2 million. But like, to answer your question, so like, how would you make money back on a $2 million film if you didn't get a theatrical release? So some of the things that people are doing in the States right now are having some of their budget for marketing their own P&A. So they're putting it into a few theaters, doing a full launch in 3 or 4 or 5 maybe markets in the US, and then premiering it on VOD, yeah. So it is possible to make, you know, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in VOD in the first year if it's released properly. That's kind of how penetrated the VOD market is in the States now. I haven't heard of too many things going over $1 million in that. Yes.
Even when you look at this $2 million range,
Yeah.
I'm sure you know at the specialty level last weekend in the States, 19 films went out. And I think the one with the highest per screen average was Grey Gardens, and that was because Miles died the day before it opened. And the rest of these movies took over 5 cinemas, 3 cinemas, 7 cinemas.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we had our own one of those final hours out this very weekend, and the numbers on that, on 4 or 5 screens that it played at were, well, I won't even mention.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you hit these $2 million numbers, you hit these $1 million numbers, you hit these $500,000 numbers. The question is, are you any more likely making a film in the so-called non-dead zone to have any sort of upside of success than you are rolling the dice and going into the so-called dead zone? Because, like you said, there are a number of films each market, each year, within that price range. If they're smartly cast and the material is of a certain kind, that actually still do. So I'm not sure that, other than the fact that it's easier to raise 500,000
Yeah.
than it is to raise 3 million.
Yes.
Whether your actual probability of success is any more or less, at least statistically,
Yeah.
At least you're losing less money.
some lose.
All right, I want to move into, let's start talking, I want to shift into, I kind of highlighted the problem for the last hour. I want to talk about some solutions and how to make your independent film work in the global marketplace. So maybe we can toss around some new ideas here. And I will show you, I'm going to show you another clip in a little bit that'll make you laugh from the movie. So we talked about the reverse engineering approach, looking at the market. So we've talked about acquisition prices, even beyond acquisition prices. If you're left without an acquisition, what type of numbers are you making if you just release it yourself in the market? You know, the truth is, it's really tough to make a couple $100,000, $300,000 in the market. So that's why I always tell people, if you are going to make a movie for $1 million to $2 million, you better have insurance in there. And the insurance is international cast, 1 or 2 pre-sales, something baked in where you're not exposing a private investor to $1 million in equity, knowing that it's really going to be really tough to make that back. Let's see. Structuring your business plan. So I want to talk about, for a minute, business plans. You guys have to do business plans typically when you apply to the funding. You have to put together some type of plan. So one of my gripes about business plans in general is it's usually way too long with a whole lot of fluff. 30 pages, 50 pages is way too long. For anybody seen one of those big things, they used to like plop them on my desk, and I thought, just tell me what it is and what they want and how we're going to get paid back. I mean, those are like the three things that you want to highlight in your plan. Of course, one of the things, so here are a few of the critical things I think you should pay attention to. A distribution plan. So when I was talking to this Australian investor at EFM, one of the first questions he said to me, well, how are you going to distribute this? And where's the money going to come back from, and when? And a lot of investors have been lied to about sales cycles, so they somehow think they're going to put in money, and right when the film is finished, they're going to get is their exit. And as you probably know, nothing could be further from the truth, because even if you finish and get picked up at a major festival, you don't get that. Nobody's cutting you a check right away. It's going to take a while to get the money. It's usually going to come in payments, okay? So that's another thing. You read about, oh, they got paid, they got acquired for $1 million or $3 million. Well, that's coming in tranches. It's not Sony writing you a check. And then it's going to be based on a bunch of deliverables you have to send them. So it's not so cut and dry. So one of the things when you are out there talking to investors is keep in mind a realistic sales schedule could be 12 to 18 months minimum from when the film is finished, from when the film is finished, depending on if you're going to festivals, going straight to distribution. And then the other question the investor asked, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, if it doesn't get into a festival, the worst case scenario is we're going to put it out on DVD in the US, and these are the platforms, and these are the types of numbers that people are making on a quarterly basis from iTunes, Amazon Prime, Hulu, some of the major VOD platforms in North America. Now, as Australians, you can access those. Okay, so that market is open to you. The numbers are not available. No, but what you want to do, they're not readily available online. But you want to dig around. You want to talk to some of the digital distributors in the U.S. So there's companies like Cinedigm, Gravitas, Film Buff. When you're submitting your film to these companies, they will tell you freely, well, these are what similar films like yours right now are making on a monthly, on a quarterly basis. So you kind of have to do a little bit of digging. Another way that you can find out what some of the digital numbers look like is if you go to film markets and festivals. I always encourage people to invest in travel, to go to the film markets, to go to the festivals, because that's where you go get face-to-face with the buyers and the sales agents, and really invest in your relationships of meeting these people and saying, hey, what kind of numbers are you seeing right now off iTunes, off Amazon, off some of these platforms, off Netflix? What are they paying? And that's where you get the juice. It's some of that, there's a big controversy in the US right now because people aren't sharing the VOD numbers. But if you think outside of the box and get out from behind your computer and go out and start talking to people at some of these events. I know it's a little bit harder for you guys because you're all the way in Australia and all the film markets are very, very far away and expensive, but it can be a good investment once a year or whatever to try to go to some of these things. And when people come through and to the festivals in Australia to try to get that information from as many people as you can. Also talk to other filmmakers who are distributing on the VOD system and find out what they're making. But yeah, so you want to talk to, and these digital distributors are actually really good about giving away that kind of intelligence, because in my experience, they don't want a lot of angry filmmakers. So I've done a few, if you go onto my website, filmspecific.com, I have 2 or 3 podcasts It's also on iTunes with 3 different VOD distributors in the US, and all of them pretty much say, listen, we don't want to lead anyone on. We don't want you to come to us thinking you're going to make all this money, so we will freely tell you realistically what other films are making right now. And they also give numbers on those podcasts, so you can get some intelligence from that. But yeah, so for the purpose of a business plan, that was, you know, the second question that investor asked us was, how are you going to distribute this? How much do you think we'll make? And, you know, I was really conservative with him and said, look, if we hit it out of the park, we'll make $100,000 in a year. It's, you know, but because that's what some films who are doing really well are doing. Now, luckily, we were coming to him for much less than that, so that wasn't an issue. We weren't asking for $1 million. So business plan, you want to talk about your distribution strategy, you want to talk about a timeline, and you want to try and have, if you are going to get sales projections, like I said, from a sales agent, remember, low, medium, high, you're not going to sell all those territories. So be conservative and say in there, we plan to, you know, if all goes well, we'll sell 70%. If it doesn't go so well, we'll sell 30% of these territories. Any questions about business plans? Yes?
A couple of times you've mentioned figures that are films are procured for it, Sundance, like $1 million or $3 million.
Yes.
Is that worldwide, all channels?
Okay, so yeah, sometimes it is. Other times it's for just North America. Sometimes it's all English speaking. So if you guys, I really suggest looking at the IndieWire roundups. They'll do it after every major festival, and it usually gives you all the details of the deals. The thing is that even if it's not worldwide though, sometimes there's a little bit more money to be made, but it's not a whole lot. Do you know what I mean? So.
But it would generally include VOD and DVD as well.
Definitely, yeah.
The deals we're talking about $50,000. I imagine that they're just DVD.
Well, so nowadays, especially in North America, not as much in Europe yet, but in North America, VOD is included with every deal. And it's really, really hard to carve that out because what happens is distributors know that's their profit center. So if they're going to take on a film for 5 years, they want the VOD rights because they want to be able to mine that revenue over the 5 years. It used to be easier a few years ago, back when VOD was really, really small numbers and the distributors weren't hip to it yet. You could carve out those rights. Nowadays, if you are going to get any type of distribution deal, I mean like 9 times out of 10, if not more, they will require all those rights. So you have to make sure that you have to weigh it. Like if somebody's offering you $50,000 for all your rights in North America, could you go out and make more than that on your own on VOD? And sometimes the answer is yes. I mean, I've worked with some filmmakers who've turned down deals like that and said, listen, I'm going to go put it in 3 or 4 theaters and try to make $100,000 on VOD.
Stacey, have you had any experience with people using Tug in the US and how they do it?
Yeah, so Tug, do they have Tug in Australia? Okay, great. Yeah, Tug is a great platform for the actual, what I like about Tug is it helps physically book the theaters for you. So it takes that part of the equation out of it. But you're still responsible for the promotion and the marketing, which in my mind is the hardest part. So Tug, I think, can be a great tool for helping you actually get it into theaters. But I still think the hard work is in getting what they call local promoters in each of the places and selling the tickets that way. So probably about 50% of the filmmakers I work with, actually maybe, yeah, between 30 and 50 will use Tug, and then the other half will simply either call theaters on their own. So if they're only doing 3 or 4 theaters, they'll say, well, I'll just do it on my own. or a lot of them, a few of the VOD companies now are actually starting to organize theatrical releases for the filmmakers. So as an Australian filmmaker, let's say you want to pursue US distribution. One of the companies you might talk to is a Gravitas. Okay, they're one of the biggest digital companies, but they've now branched into doing theatrical releases, retail DVD. So if they see potential in your film, or it was in a festival and they see there's been some buzz or whatever, what they'll do then is invest in putting it in 2 or 3 different theaters to drive the digital sales. So what's happening now is a lot of the digital companies are starting to diversify into doing the theatrical piece for you. So services like Tug are becoming a little bit less popular because people are figuring out that it's coming from other sources now. Has anyone used Tug in the audience? Found it? Gather in the US. Did you find it helpful?
It's been amazing. We've made probably triple our theatrical US box office through On Demand, and it's still screening after 24 weeks with them.
Terrific. Congratulations. Yeah.
Highly recommend. For the right film, I think it's amazing.
For the right film, that's right. And you know what that means too is if they're for films where you have, I had some clients who had a feature film, and one of the themes was Alzheimer's. And so what they did is they did a Tug release and tapped into the local Alzheimer's Association chapters in the different states and had them promoting their Tug screenings. So that's an example of the right kind of film because it had a mechanism for tapping into these, there was a real niche to it. It had a mechanism for tapping into all these local audiences. What else on business plans? So distribution plan, you want to if you're planning to do a self-theatrical release, be sure you're going to talk about how you're going to pay for it because obviously it does cost some money. So you want to show that in our budget, so plan A, for example, is we hope to get into Sundance, Toronto, Venice, and get acquired for $2 to $3 million. Plan B is we've allocated this much of our budget for our own P&A to put it in theater, a couple of theaters, to get some press, hire PR, and to put it out onto platforms ourselves and try and, you know, make back the revenue that way.
What about for an Australian? Would you recommend doing a theatrical release in the US in that particular instance?
For an Australian film? Yeah, you know, look.
Rather than doing it here, I mean, it's not much of a market.
Yeah, no, you definitely could. And like I said, these digital distributors in the US are, and that's one of the, it's like a one-stop shop now. So you can, you know, and look, they want to expand their catalogs. So they're like taking films in from Europe, from the UK, from Australia, New Zealand, and they're basically saying, hey, let us distribute your film. We'll actually put it into a few theaters for you.
6 Australian films since January have played 5, 6, 7, up to about 15 US cinemas using that route.
Yeah, with
It's consistent almost twice a month now.
terrific. Which distributors or which services?
A couple have gone with E1, a couple have gone, as you say, with Gravitas.
Gravitas.
Wellgo with one,
Uh-huh.
a number of other itsy-bitsy baby distributors.
Yes.
What's the number which you put in if you're allocating money for distribution?
Right, that's a good question. So it kind of depends on the amount of theaters, but I would say your biggest cost is usually hiring the PR, I think, someone to actually help you, you know, get some word of mouth. So that could be, you know, let's say anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 to $50,000, depending on how many theaters. I know some people who spend as little as, I had a client who spent, I believe, about 10 grand. She did 2 markets, LA and New York, and she hired a publicist. And that was kind of all in for a week in LA and a week in New York. over a 2-month period. So that paid the retainer of the PR person plus some other bits and bobs. So it could, and those are two very expensive markets. So that 10 grand could have probably been 4 smaller markets if you wanted to. And then obviously I have people, the people who did this film on Alzheimer's, the movie's called Angel's Perch. And if you want to look it up, I've done 2 or 3 podcasts with them. It's an ongoing case study if you're interested to hear how they crowdfunded and then put it out through TUG. They did, I believe, they went over a period of about 6 months of screenings and spent about 50 grand. So it's kind of like anywhere in that range, depending. And again, one of the things that sometimes people will do when they're raising money in their business plans is they'll say, this is our budget. We're going to take, this is our marketing budget. We've got $50,000 allocated for our plan B. If we get picked up at Sundance, we'll just give you this money back. We won't even use it. But we're going to have that in case we don't get the lottery and we need to use it. Then we have a mechanism for taking it out into the market. So that's another way you can position it to investors to mitigate some of that risk.